While killing gorillas is already illegal in the country, declaring the subspecies as critically endangered would probably bring more funding and support for saving it. Protecting the entirety of the gorilla's 7,700 square miles territory would no doubt prove impossible, but Dr. Plumptree and his colleagues are talking with the government and community leaders about establishing 2 new protected areas that would encompass 60% of the remaining gorilla's habitat. The shuttle was designed to be a space truck. It's a multi-purpose vehicle. We've done a tremendous number of different things with it. It's the most versatile space vehicle that has ever been built. We've used it to launch satellites. We've used it to repair satellites in orbit and put them back into orbit. We've used it to capture satellites and bring them back to Earth for repair. Living room is the most used part that withholds most of the traffic coming in and out of the house. It is highly recommended that the flooring should be strong enough that it can endure all such amendments done with your furniture or to the increasing and decreasing ratio of visitors. For this purpose, you can opt for hardwood flooring. Being classy and sophisticated in look, it is the perfect choice for your living room whenever you are remodeling your home. In an attempt to lure new students, leading business schools, including Harvard, Stanford, the University of Chicago and Wharton, have moved away from the unofficial missions and prerequisite of 4 years work experience and instead have set their sights on recent college graduates and so-called early career professionals with only a couple of years of work under their belt. Roman writers and orators began to expand their imaginative and intellectual horizons and refine the Latin language through the study of Greek literature. Early Roman literature had two kinds: the recording and examination of public life and behavior through life stories of famous men, and the particularly Roman art of satirical comedy and drama. At the beginning of each fiscal year, funds are allocated to each state account in accordance with the university's financial plan. Funds are allocated to each account by objects of expenditure. Account managers are responsible for ensuring that adequate funds are available in the appropriate object before initiating transactions to use the funds. Once you've picked a general topic for your paper, you need to come up with a thesis. Your thesis is the main and focal point of your paper, and it's the position you'll take on your particular topic. Formulating a strong thesis is one of the most important things you need to do to ace your paper.
Much of what people do today disguises a desperate search for meaning, the result of the crisis of belief that has become a major problem of the Western world. On the one hand, the elites and their high culture suffer a loss of confidence, and aimless consumerism is widespread. On the other, powerful new myths arise, as with sporting heroes. Karl Marx is arguably the most famous political philosopher of all time, but he was also one of the great foreign correspondents of the 19th century. During his 11 years writing for the New York Tribune, their collaboration began in 1852. Marx tackled an abundance of topics, from issues of class and the state to world affairs. By beginning so early, he knows that he has plenty of time to do thoroughly all the work he can be expected to do. All his work having been finished in good time, he has a long interval of rest in the evening before the timely hour when he goes to bed. After a sound night's rest, he rises early next morning in good health and spirits for the labors of a new day. This study marks the first time scientists have linked dike formation to large, damaging earthquakes, and Warthia is looking back through history for more examples. She says researchers will never be able to predict exactly when an earthquake might strike after a dike intrusion. But at least now, researchers and rift zone residents know they're not just in for bangs, they may also be in for shudders. In the Middle Ages, the design and use of flags were considered a means of identifying social status. Flags were, therefore, the symbols not of nations, but of the nobility. The design of each flag resembled the devices on a noble's coat of arms, and the size of the flags was an indication of how high the owner stood in the nobility. Market research is a vital part of the planning of any business. However experienced you or your staff may be in a particular field, if you are thinking of introducing a service to a new area, it is important to find out what the local population thinks about it first. The second group that is particularly vulnerable are night shift workers, and the third group that is particularly vulnerable are people with sleep disorders, particularly sleep apnea. 1 out of 3 men and 1 out of 6 women have sleep apnea. And yet, 85% are undiagnosed and untreated. And it more than doubles the risk of cancers.
The tsunamis could provide crucial information about the habitability of ancient Mars. The first one occurred when the planet must have been relatively warm and amenable for life, because it carved out backwash channels as it returned to the sea. By contrast, the planet had become much cooler by the time the second tsunami hit. Currently, integration is increasingly needed in the business environment. This need emerges from the efficiency and synergy requirements necessary in a complex and turbulent environment. In other words, integration is needed to facilitate coordination, which is again related to the building of competitive advantage. Many papers you write in college will require you to include quotes from one or more sources. Even if you don't have to do it, integrating a few quotes into your writing can add life and persuasiveness to your arguments. The key is to use quotes to support a point you're trying to make rather than just include them to fill space. Analysts were impressed by the improvement in margins reported across all regions, apart from the United Kingdom, and said that this reflected a clear effort to improve profitability across the business. Although the turnaround is still in its early stages and the valuation looks full, given the challenge of turning around such a large and complex business, this is certainly an impressive start. The climate for doing business improved in Egypt more than in any other country last year, according to a global study that revealed a wave of company-oriented reforms across the Middle East. The World Bank rankings, which look at business regulations, also showed that the pace of business reforms in Eastern Europe was overtaking East Asia. Unions take the power out of the employer's hands on many issues. There are examples of cases where workers were engaging in sexual or racial harassment, but were protected by their unions and allowed to keep their jobs. Poor workers and excellent workers often receive the same pay and raises, giving no reason for a person to work harder than necessary at their jobs.